From Calvary Church of Santa Ana, this is the Calvary Life Podcast, the show where we share stories, laugh together, and have discussions about faith, life, and God with people from Calvary Church. Here's your host, Eric Wakeling.
All right, welcome to the Calvary Life Podcast, and I am very excited today to have Matt Doan here as a guest on the podcast. You've been a co-host many times.
Well, I guess the key sentence or key word in that sentence is have been a host, because somehow I was hosting this with you, and then I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I'm not a host.
Yeah,
so, kind of like Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon when Ed gets cut.
Yes, so you just kind of move down the couch a little bit, Not sure where you're going to end up. No, we're doing this a little different these days, but we want to get you back.
Nothing but love. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. So the plan here today, right, is to talk about what?
Yeah, so among other things, we want to talk about neighboring and what's it look like to be normal in your neighborhood, but also be missional, right?
Right. So actually that was the plan, but that's actually just the plan I told you, Matt. That's not at all what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
For real. So what we're going to actually talk about today, I'm turning the tables on you, but we're going to talk about you.
Okay.
Just a genuine, authenticity check.
Okay. Yes.
Did you have any idea that I was doing this?
No. In fact, I've been asking you the last few days, okay, do we need to talk about what we're going to talk about? And you're like, no.
I just like having you be natural and stuff, right? Yeah. So actually we're talking about Matt Doan because you, Matt Doan, I think are, you have this reputation, which I know sometimes is hard for you, but as this person that I believe shows God's love and kindness with your actions more than anybody that I know.
Thank you.
And I think in a lot of ways, this will actually then be a great way to talk about neighboring at some level. If we're talking about just displaying this, the kindness and the love of Christ in our everyday actions. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to get into this and I'm going to have to for the people to understand, right. I'm probably going to have to draw things out of you because I think this is uncomfortable probably for you already.
Most of you probably want to just turn off the podcast right now.
Are you sweating? I mean, maybe lift your hands.
Well, no, I am because, here's about me. I do not have air conditioning in my car, and I just drove my kids home before this. I was running late, as you know. That's something about me.
Yeah, we're going to get to it, I promise.
Good. And so I literally walked into the studio right now sweating. And you're seeing Matt Doan in all his glory. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm starting to laugh almost as much as I did when I had Grace on this show. Okay, so this is good. But let's get into this a little bit with you.
Sure.
Help us understand you. How do you think, first of all, because then I want to kind of go back in your life, but how do you think you're able to sort of see people the way that you do? Because I think you genuinely see people. One thing about you is I think you see people as someone to love and care for before you see them as anything else, right? What do you think? Where do you think that comes from? How do you think that works in your life?
I mean, I don't know. You just kind of are who you are, right? In some ways, but I think the Lord's, some of it's spiritual gifting.
Yeah.
I think I have the gift of mercy and encouragement. And so as the Holy Spirit places you in that, you look for opportunities to encourage people, to show mercy, empathy to them.
Yep.
So I think some of that comes, I don't know if the word naturally, but it's the supernaturally, right? Comes from the Spirit in that. I always say, if you see anything good in me, it's the Lord. If you see anything bad in me, that's definitely me coming out. But I guess how do I see people? It's through the Spirit's guidance, gifting. And I just have a genuine interest, curiosity in most people.
Yeah. And I think that's actually probably a huge thing for people to think about how to develop in them if it's not just supernaturally natural for them. Because I think that's what's hard is for some people it's okay, well, if this isn't just feeling supernaturally natural for me, then how can I sort of develop that in me?
Yeah.
And maybe it's maybe I shouldn't, maybe I'm interviewing Michael Jordan instead of interviewing Phil Jackson. I know I'm not saying you're, but at some level, what I mean by that is just if it comes too naturally to you, is it sometimes the coaches are the ones that aren't that.
Right, who can see things that others can't.
Right, maybe they weren't that great on the field. You'd probably be a really good fantasy football coach.
Yeah, we'll get into that maybe too. Where Eric and I are both in a fantasy football league together.
Yeah, and his team's not that good, so he'd probably be really good at coaching others.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, but okay, so like, but I do think like in that way, like something that people can develop is to be curious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, how do you think that like sort of, how do you see that playing out, to be curious?
Yeah, so it's I really enjoy drawing people out. So I enjoy asking them questions that get them to talk about themselves, not in a way that's like they don't want to, or it's like
right.
I don't know, vulnerability just for the sake of vulnerability, but it's more of like just curious what makes people tick, how do they think, what are the things they care about, what's their background. Those are all things that just interest me.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think sometimes, like, I've noticed people that are sort of like really, maybe it's naturally good at this or they've honed it or something, is like I've gone into something to ask somebody questions about them.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I find myself 30 minutes later, like I've realized I've just answered a bunch of their questions.
Totally.
And I'm like, no, I meant to like ask you a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
And that could be frustrating or whatever.
Right.
But I like that quote that was like, try to be more interested than interesting.
Yeah, we just came across that. Where did we come across it?
I don't even remember where we came across that, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's good. Like,
it is.
Because a lot of times we feel this need to like present as cool or smart or whatever.
Similar to that same quote, I recently came across an idea of when you walk into a room, do you say, "Here I am," or "There you are"? And I think that's good as far as just, what's our mindset? Are we others focused, or are we just, oh no, everyone's looking at me?
Yeah.
And we're all naturally, self-centered, focused on ourselves, but to try to get beyond that to see the other.
Right. All right. So, okay. So
pretty exciting so far, people.
No, I think this is helpful. I think if anybody could be, this is like, I know it's like, it's so weird to say it to you, but like, if you want to be like Matt Doan, this is the episode for you.
Okay.
I love how uncomfortable he is.
Yes, I do. I'm totally uncomfortable.
It's so good. Okay. So with that, like, I know we've talked about this a little bit, but like, how much is God's work and how much is hard work? So in that, like, I think that there's, like, with all things, there's sort of both. Even with the things that we're gifted in, we have to kind of like practice or develop that muscle or that skill set, so to speak. Because, like, I know that you get angry. I know that you get annoyed at people. Yep. Like, I'm able to be around you enough to know like your humanity.
Do you have any examples of that?
Probably not, but it's probably mostly probably at me a few times. But but it's like, but like in that, like I know you enough to know that you will get that way. Right. But I also know that you kind of don't like. That's not just what's like coming out of you all the time necessarily. Whereas I might feel like I honestly feel a little bit more annoyed all the time. Maybe it's just. But for you, how much do you think is like because of that? Like how much is hard work? How much is God's work?
Ooh, it's hard to put a number.
No,
on
you
that,
don't need
but
to.
It's like, I mean, I do a fair amount of evaluation too, like just into my each day, like what are my interactions like with people? What are places that I felt like I was operating in a way that, like, that's how God made me. That was a beneficial, encouraging conversation or interaction. And then what were ways that just didn't feel like that either clicked or it was.
So what's that look like, that evaluation? What do you mean?
Oftentimes like laying in bed, just thinking about the day and just thinking about people that I've talked to. Sometimes it's even just real time, just looking and just being like, that conversation didn't go or lead to a place that I was excited about or wanted it to go, as far as blessing that person, encouraging them, or blessing, encouraging me too, right?
Right.
So, in fact, even just yesterday we had a staff meeting, and it was Tim Nellis who brought this up. He's like, I want our staff to be a place where we're just constantly encouraging others and even telling others about each other and the gifts that we see in each other. And I heard that from him and I was like, oh, that's so good. Like, I want to have that mindset at the end of the day of like, oh, I've blessed my colleagues and those around me by even what I've said about them. Yeah. Not like false, flattery, but like actually looking for things that you just see in people.
Right.
So I was actually thinking about that today. So we had like our outreach team meeting. And I was thinking of, okay, what are some ways that I can look at? Our team is John Smalley, Aaron Holm, Rick Deming. What are some ways that I can just look at them and encourage them with my words today? So it was on my mind throughout the day.
That's cool. I think, and you have like a sense of, I don't know how much you're actively doing this or not, but you've had this sort of like rule of life and kind of like an order of your day even and stuff like that, right? And so I don't know, does any of that like fall into it? And like, what does that even mean?
That's kind of new for me. So
so maybe explain rule of life.
So rule of life is from the Benedictine monks.
Yes, Benedictine.
Benedictine monks. And it's this idea that you just bring rhythms and order to your day. And so the way they would do it is they would do morning, afternoon, evening, and then like they call it a bedtime
like
prayer.
Vespers or something.
Right, yeah. So it'd be either reading Psalm, having silence and solitude. So, a huge influence on me the last couple of years has been a pastor out in New York named Pete Scazzaro. He wrote a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. There's a kind of a pastor edition called Emotionally Healthy Leadership that I know both you and I have loved.
Yeah.
And so he really encourages and emphasizes the idea of creating a rule of life, both in the daily offices, what he calls it, that's praying morning, afternoon, evening, but also just creating some rhythms in your life. And so actually 2020 is ironic. This is the year to do this. But beginning of the year, I wrote down in 4 categories: relationships, work, spiritual life, or I called it prayer, and then what was the other one? Was just Sabbath. So in those 4 areas, here's kind of the rules that I want for my day, for my weeks, my months, and then the year. And then obviously COVID hit. And
it's like every schedule
kind of blew all of that out of the water.
Pure solitude for 7 months. No.
Yeah, exactly. But that's been helpful for me. I actually just retyped it last week. And so it's like this little sheet, 8x11 sheet that I use, and I keep it in my computer bag. And every day when I pull out my laptop here at church, I try to look at it and examine it and think through, okay, how am I doing in my rule? So it's not like rule like legalism or, things I have to do. It's more things like these are just rhythms I want in my life.
Yep. That's cool. And so, like, are any of those like part of that, like that self-reflection or something, or maybe not
a little
as
bit?
much?
Yeah, in the relationship section, there's a few
check
lines in there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back. Let's go back in the life of Matt Doan. Like, what was your family life like growing up? Like parents, siblings, like know.
Yeah.
What was
So
going
some
on
of you have heard about this through different sermons stuff I've given, but grew up in Santa Cruz, Northern California. So I call it NorCal, but it's really like Central Coast by Monterey, between San Jose and Monterey.
NorCal, dude.
This is NorCal for our purposes. Anything north of Bakersfield.
Yeah, exactly. Like San Luis Obispo is central, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So grew up there, oldest of 4 kids. My dad was a pastor like your dad.
Yeah.
So PK in church constantly, right? So Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights. We had a Friday event that we did. So pretty much was like a ward of the church in a lot of ways, like just always there.
Yeah.
And had positive experiences of church. 7 years old, VBS, became, placed my faith in Jesus.
Yeah.
Then I was 13 and my dad was fired from that church.
Yeah.
And it was super painful for him. And it wasn't like a moral thing, but there was like just disagreement between he and some of the other staff and elders, and so they parted ways. But for me as a 13-year-old, super painful, because this is where I met God.
Yeah.
This is where I knew God was in some ways.
Is that where you went your entire life too? So it's like all your friends and stuff like
friends,
that?
Yeah. And so that was definitely a marker in our family's life and in my life. My dad was without a job for about a year. And just even some cool things during that time where people like dropped off groceries at our front door, knocked on the door and ran away. And so we saw how God provided for us during that time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of my first real crisis of faith of like, whoa, and the church doesn't want us. Does that mean God doesn't want us? Or, thinking through something. I know you've had your own experiences too with some of that stuff in ministry.
Sure, but like, okay, so how did you process through that as a teenager?
So then it was kind of slowly processing through that at the age of 15, just kind of floating. First year of high school, not connected to Jesus in any real way, but not really necessarily a bad kid either. That just doesn't really come naturally to me. I mean, we're all sinners, but like I wasn't like looking to necessarily rebel in huge ways. But I had my own deal, and then my mom was the one who signed me up for Hume Lake. Good old Hume Lake Christian Camp.
Yep.
And put me on the bus. I didn't want to go. It was somewhere between freshman and sophomore year, but it was at Hume that I had like a real encounter experience with Jesus. And it was that Thursday night where we now know it as like as old youth pastors, rededication night, right?
Yeah.
And it was there that I just said, okay, God, I believe you're 100% real. I want to follow you with my
What year was that?
Sorry. Like I was 15.
Okay, so sophomore, junior.
Yeah,
sophomore,
between
probably.
freshman and sophomore.
Okay.
I want to follow you with my whole life, Jesus, but please don't make me a pastor or a missionary. And
So why do you think you were saying that? You want to be a professional ball player at the time?
Well, yeah, I want to be a baseball player for sure, or a police officer. Okay. We had just gone through this experience when my dad was a pastor, and we'd been hurt by it. Yeah. And then missionary, I didn't want to live in Africa. So ironically now, at the age of 45, 30 years later, I'm a pastor to missionaries at Calvary Church, which I love. It's totally my calling. So, but yeah, just interesting how God works in those ways.
So do you think you, this whole thing of you having this caring heart for others, do you feel like that was evident in your life? When you're a little kid, kind of junior high, high school?
I think so. I'm sure you would ask my childhood friends. Yeah. I think I always kind of had a bent for encouragement or empathy. Yeah. I would always find myself going towards the new kid or the kid that didn't have any friends, and I would try to make sure they were included in our group. But also I was a punk too.
Sure.
Broke my sister's collarbone, rolling
Nothing wrong with that.
down
That's
a hill.
Good. That's normal. Just
kidding. I had to sit in at 5th grade. I had to sit in for 2 weeks during recess, every recess and lunch, because I called a mom of another kid in our group a witch.
I mean, Santa Cruz.
Yeah. It was very much possible that she was
Exactly.
New Age Santa Cruz. But yeah, I think I always kind of had a inkling or bent towards that.
Yeah, you did. Okay, so that's interesting. Just of how God was already kind of shaping that in you and to be that way. Where are you in your birth order again?
So
in your
oldest
family?
of 4 kids. So
oldest of 4 kids.
2 boys, 2 girls, which is what I now have too.
Okay.
Kind of fun.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. You see that probably in Lily a little bit too.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Lily's our oldest. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's this maybe sense of being oldest of 4 that you have a bit of a caretaker mentality,
yeah,
right?
For sure.
Wanting to,
right?
It's obviously not a parent, but it's kind of parents,
right? Looking out for the little ones.
It's the TA to the parents.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so it's interesting how so your life experiences, some of that is kind of
shaped.
Has kind of shaped that character.
And just on that side note, because I experienced some hurt in the church, I have a deep heart for people who have experienced pain in the church. I can relate to that in some way. Not obviously, some have been hurt way worse than that. But,
sure.
But yeah, I feel like I'm drawn to that in people.
Yeah. But even your caveat of saying other people have been hurt worse than me, that's still your caring heart, because even as the midst you're saying that, you're trying to care for others, because all of our hurt is our hurt.
Sure, it's
and
legit.
So it feels as big to us as someone else's hurt that we know is massive, and so I think that's super shaping in us. But okay, so then why did you choose Biola? And let's talk a little bit about how God shaped you in that experience for college.
Yeah, so I'm a huge sports fan.
Yes.
Love sports. One of the things that we love talking about together.
Right. So that's why you went to Biola.
No.
Okay.
That's so when I was in high school, maybe some of you guys remember this, but Loyola Marymount went on this incredible March Madness basketball run. Hank Gathers passed away on the court. Yeah. Bo Kimball shooting left-handed free throws to make tribute to his friend.
Yes.
I thought it was the coolest thing. And so I had a friend's older sister who said, I'm going to Biola. And I'm like, that's so cool. I want to go to Biola because that's where Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball went. So I thought Biola was Loyola. And so I didn't know anyone that went there. And so I started telling people, I want to go to Loyola, Biola.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So yeah, then it was senior year of high school, and there was 10 kids from our high school that all decided we were all going to go to Biola together.
Okay.
So it was kind of this huge group. Ironically, it was only one other guy ended up going.
Okay.
Oh, it was 10. But
now, did you get recruited or did you walk on?
No. So to play
he's
baseball.
A baseball player, right?
Yeah. So no, I wasn't going to play baseball.
Oh, okay.
My senior year of high school, I didn't really have a very good season.
Okay.
I didn't have any opportunities to play baseball.
Right.
But then I came, and then the first week I was in registration line at Biola, and I happened to be next to a baseball guy. I started asking about the team, and then I walked by the field, and I'm like, these guys aren't that good. I can play here. So so I just talked to the coach, which was Jerry Houston back in the day.
Yeah. Totally.
And
it's a great guy, mutual friend.
Yeah, and then quickly got connected to the Biola baseball team. Played all 4 years.
Yeah, so that's amazing, though. I mean, it's amazing to play baseball at any college, even if you're kind of dissing the level.
It was NAIA, so it wasn't super competitive, but it was I loved it. It was so fun.
Right. And so, did you how do you think? how did then God start shaping you while you were there, even when it came to some of this stuff we're talking about this kind of nurturing, caring heart thing?
Yeah. So part of it was just even in friendships and caring for people, listening to their stories, walking them through hard things with them. I think I started seeing some of the pastoral gifts like coming out and being recognized. But it was actually on, I went with Athletes in Action, which is part of Campus Crusade. That's right. I went on a summer trip with them to play baseball down to Costa Rica, Nicaragua, here in the States. And it was on that trip that they had this thing where they, like each night they would get one guy in the middle of the kind of mush pot and they'd all surround him and then they'd just speak into his life. And when it was my turn to do that, like all 21 guys on the team said like, Matt, you should be a pastor. Matt, you should be a pastor. Wow. And Eric, I started crying because I was like, it was something I was already starting to feel, but not wanting to for a lot of reasons. Yep. But it was like the Spirit was just like confirming it in that moment. Through those, I'll never forget that. It was actually in San Jose, Costa Rica, in this little hotel room where they're just all speaking into me in that. So that was kind of a flashpoint moment for me of like, okay, I think vocational ministry might be for me.
Interesting. And that's what's interesting too is that actually came out of encouragement.
Right,
so like you as this kind of person that has a heart for encouragement, well, God used encouragement.
Yeah, totally. I hadn't thought about it like that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Okay, so, but you weren't on the road to being a pastor. You were on the road to weren't you like working for the Dodgers?
Yeah. So my senior in college, you had to do like an internship. I was a communications major, which no offense, Aaron and Jason Krusevich, but it's the easiest major ever in the history of Biola University.
Easier than Christian education?
Oh yeah, please.
Wow. Okay, I like this. I'm gonna use this.
But yeah, so went through that program, but you had to do an internship as part of it, and so I was like, where could I intern that you probably would never get a job at? It would be really hard to get a job at, but an internship you could get. I don't know. I was thinking that. So I started going, I'd like to do sports. Yeah. So I called up the Angels, called up the Dodgers, and then got an internship with the Dodgers. I was working in public relations and had a key to Dodger Stadium. Like some really, like for a baseball nerd and sports fan, it was like there were some really fun moments in that. And so I was thinking, okay, well, maybe this is the avenue that I'll just take with my life. I'll work in sports management. In fact, some of the guys that were interns with me are now like kind of like are pretty high up in sports, which is kind of funny.
That's cool.
But it was during that experience that I came here to Calvary. I was 21 years old, started volunteering in the high school group. And just a quick story on that. So I was working for the Dodgers. It was a Sunday night ESPN game, and you had to be there for all day, all night for those games in my little job. Okay. And but then Hume Lake started Sunday night, and so I asked my boss, I'm like, "Hey, is there any way I could leave early and drive up to Hume Lake?" And he's like, "I don't know." And like, just their whole focus is, is obviously on their team, and
because what will the Dodgers do without Matt Doan?
Right. It's like George Costanza, like assistant to the traveling secretary. Exactly. And but at the last minute, he's like, "Yeah, just go." And which actually, in my evaluation after the end of that season, he's like, "I knew that you didn't want this enough when you wanted to go on that trip."
Interesting.
So yeah. Okay. But that was even part of my story. So I went up to Hume Lake, got there like at midnight. Walk into this cabin full of freshman boys, just all hyped up on candy. First night of camp, they're all pumped. I meet these guys like at midnight. We all get into our bunks, and it was this freshman boy named Drew, and like in the middle of the night, he goes, "Hey, leader," because we hadn't even met long enough for him to remember my name. I didn't know even their names.
Hey,
he's like, he's like, leader. He's like, "I don't feel so good," and he is on the top bunk, and he pukes off the top bunk all over the floor. I'm 21 years old, and so I went and got paper towels, cleaned it up, and as I'm cleaning up, he throws up again. So now I'm cleaning up a second episode here, and I don't know enough, but I'm like, all right, this guy needs like maybe some more medical help than this. So I walk him down this dark hill. If you've ever been to Hume Lake, like all the guys' cabins are up on the hill. Yeah. We're walking down the hill trying to find like the nurse's station that I can remember from back when I was 15. Yeah. And I just look at this kid, Drew. I've known him for like 2 hours now in the middle of the night. I'm like, I just love this kid. I just love this kid. Like, this is such a privilege to be with him right now. And that's just the Spirit of God. That because 21 years old, I don't care about high school kids. But it's like God was just giving me a love for this kid and for that group of guys that week. And that really jump-started my ministry, I think, like, or kind of having confidence that, okay, I think I'm wired for this.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I think you really definitely were wired for it. So, okay. So let's talk then. Let's get into a little bit of more like, not like your story, but just kind of talking through some of this stuff.
Yep.
Okay. When it comes to this, like, I think if people are thinking, people are like, I think as people are listening to this, they can get to know you a little bit better, deeper, but also kind of like, I want to be, because I think a lot of people, maybe like me, think like, I want to be sort of like a nicer, kinder person. I'm not saying I'm not like nice or kind, but I think I might have more of like a cynical bent or a strategic bent or whatever. And so it's like, how can I grow at this? But like at the same time, I think you and I, like, we're actually like a really good team when it comes to ministry stuff. Like you have area of giftedness and shape and skill that I don't have.
Yep.
And I think I have areas of giftedness and shape and skill that you don't have.
I got to interrupt you on that. Okay. So Eric and I, a couple years ago, we went to Europe together. Just the two of us went to Paris, and then we visited the Tweedies in Germany. We had so much fun.
Yeah, we did.
But it was so funny. Chris Tweedy, one of our Calvary missionaries, looked at us at one point. Remember what I'm going to say? And I know what I'm going to say. And he goes, man, I love being with you guys because if we didn't have you, Eric, we would be lost and like late everywhere. If we didn't have you, I don't forget what he said about me. Actually, he's like something about like I bring fun or like something like that. So we're a good team. That's all.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's where I think. So just when it comes to that kind of stuff, like I do tend probably to be a little less. And I'm not trying to like diss myself here, but just like I think compassionate and the caring and all that stuff is hard. Like it is more like I have to work towards that. Right. And then I think, I'm probably a little more when it comes to strategic or timely, as you said already that you were late for this recording, but timely or like get her done kind of person when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that you aren't those things. It doesn't mean I'm not like caring at all, or something or compassionate at all. I'm not those things, but like, what do you think, what are the concerns? First of all, let's talk concerns for people like us working together. Because I think a lot of people kind of have like, you're just shaped super differently, but it's like a beautiful thing that I think that our gifts can like come together to form like the ultimate Voltron or whatever.
Voltron? I'm such a nerd. That's like, that just totally ages us when we grew up in the 80s, doesn't it? Transformers, more than meets the eye.
Exactly.
So I guess, what you're trying to say is if you have a strategic bent, how do you work with someone that's more of
or like what are like some maybe like areas, how do we conflict, how would people like us like struggle to work together?
Oh yeah. So
first of all,
so I guess it would be like, if you want to just get it done, like a task, and then maybe my personality be like, no, but was everybody like in the meeting seen or heard or encouraged?
Right.
And it's like, well, that's not the point of the meeting. The point of the meeting is to get this done.
Right.
So I think my point of view, it could be like, oh, but we're not walking out of here feeling better about our team. But then vice versa.
Right.
I think from your gifting point of view, it could be like, oh, great, we feel great as a team, but now we don't know what we're going to be doing at this event. You know what I mean? That's where you need both to be able to see that.
Yeah, that's true. I think there is some of that. Yeah, and it's like, it's interesting because like I do think at this, like some level, like I have to remember to help everyone feel seen. Yeah. And I want that. Like it's hard because like all those things like, and I bet it's the same for you. Like I genuinely want everyone to feel seen, to be cared for and all that. And you like genuinely want us to get the stuff done that we need to get done, let's say, or whatever, right? Yeah. But like at the same time, it's just this interesting thing of the body. I think it's like a interesting kind of example of how the body's supposed to work together, but it's also like not everybody is everything.
Right.
But like everybody's got to help tear the chairs down after the event, but also everybody has to be nice. Like you can't be a jerk just because you're task oriented, right? You know, and you can't like
walk over people. You won't last long,
right? You won't last long, but you also you don't get like a free pass to not do the work just because you're like caring.
Yep.
So
true.
But it's challenge. It's still like it's kind of like challenging to. I think what at least something I've been trying to think about lately too. I mean, not lately, but maybe for a long time. But just like see like really be intentional about seeing how it is these things are good compliments.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like see that good part in the other versus like the part that maybe you're frustrated by.
Sure, yeah, because there's always like a strength and weakness to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, boy, I mean, from a leadership perspective, making sure that you have someone with your weaknesses
right.
that is on your team.
Right.
Something we've talked a lot about is like on your bus, right? Like who are the people on your bus or in your seat? So you need someone, if you're super relational, encouraging, empathetic, compassionate, you need someone with strategy.
Yeah.
And so you better find that person,
right.
and vice versa, right?
Right.
So, and we're really blessed here at Calvary. We have such a good team, but we have people with all those different gifts, right?
Yeah.
And so it's fun to see all those operate together. Like we were on a retreat the last 2 days at the time of this podcast or at the time of this taping. And it's fun even just to see that dynamic, right, of our staff working together and pulling out different stuff.
Exactly. Because it can be a temptation as a leader, like if you're doing the hiring or the choosing or whatever, to just get people that are like you.
Yes.
And you have to make sure that you don't do that, because it's easy, like it's selfishly, you think the people that are like me are the people that are doing it right.
Right. Yeah.
Which is totally not true at all, you know?
Yeah.
Because that would just be weird. Like it's a body made all of big toes. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Totally.
Like it's a weird looking body. But
to have that well-rounded team or staff, or even, so maybe it's not picking a team, maybe it's like your family.
Yeah, your family.
So you have
like get to pick.
Different dynamics in your extended family or that type of thing. But even I think one thing that you and I have grown in even is appreciating the other, appreciating those that have other strengths and weaknesses or strengths.
Yeah.
And then seeing that you need that too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I think like because I can have other people maybe that are more wired like me that are like, oh, aren't you frustrated by that or something?
Right.
It's like, well, sure. But like this, like, have you seen these three different things that this person was doing from someone like, not just you, but like the multiple people on our team that are kind of wired like, like you are. Yeah. And so it's like, but it can just be sort of an odd couple experience where it can get to conflict if you're not careful. Right. But I do think God has like gifted us both with the ability to like actually, I think, to like see the good in the other.
Totally.
And
then also just, boy, we're so blessed. Like you and I have a friendship that's lasted 20 years.
Yeah.
So I think just even it takes time.
Yeah.
If you're on a team or in a family or whatever you're kind of bunched together with, it takes time to appreciate each other's strengths and weaknesses too.
Yep.
So...
Yeah, and because it's interesting, even if people don't know this, but it's like we got like thrown in from day one.
Yeah.
Like day one, for me at least, day one at Calvary for me was like, I'm the junior high pastor here now, and you had just got promoted to a high school pastor like at the pretty much exact same time. Yeah. And so we were both like stepped in and it was just like, hey, what's up?
Calvary Lifers.
Yeah, Calvary Lifers. Exactly. That's what Calvary Life stands for, actually. But we had actually even in college sort of like met at like a party or something and like really resonated with like our ministry sort of philosophy and heart.
Yep.
Remember
that? Yeah.
And I was probably just making up stuff, but
me too. I didn't know what I was talking about. Exactly. I still don't.
No, but like I think too, like what do you think are for you some of the, I guess we've mentioned it, but I just didn't know if there's like other sort of joys of seeing differences kind of coming alongside one another. When it comes to like church life.
Yeah, like some of the joys of, I think when you see people with gifts that you don't possess and you see them, like you said, operating in those gifts.
Right.
And you see then God being glorified by those gifts. It's so fun.
Right, exactly.
I love being in meetings with you, with our staff, where someone will say something hard and I think my personality will be like, ooh, I need to smooth that over really quick. And then I see you and your leadership strategy speak into that with love, but also with a way to kind of move the ball forward in that conversation. And it's just awesome. It's just awesome. And it builds up the church. And so when I see things like that happen, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool,
Yeah, and then I love to see because I love to see like in a meeting where I'll see you like kind of like notice like particularize is a word we like saying, but particularize and see someone and kind of like you see like the way that you've like seen a gifting in them that maybe like nobody else saw, and that's part of your encouraging heart, but it's also part of the way I think you see people. Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes. This is like a thing I think that all of us need to sort of like address in us, like because sometimes I'll watch you do that. And I'll either respond in two ways internally, okay? There's probably three ways. But like one is like jealous that I'm not like almost
I missed that.
Yeah, like mad that I missed that, And then one is I guess that's sort of like is the like all sort of encompassing of that, where it's kind of like, or like mad at myself. So I'll be like mad at myself, which sometimes when we get mad at ourselves like that, I didn't see that, then sometimes you can respond poorly. And I've had to like learn over the years to like, and I think it's something God has like shaped in me is like, how can I see that, be mad at myself and then don't, because sometimes when you're mad at yourself, you like lash out instead of like, you know, and but that it's like, and like, I think God has like worked in me to be like, Eric, don't be stupid. Like that's like, that's awesome. Right. And then be like, no, that's awesome. Yeah. And like, be like, I don't know, celebrate in the difference. Actually, that's a victory.
Yeah. That's just maturing in leadership of all of us. I feel the same.
People.
Yeah. I totally feel the same. Yeah.
But that's what's hard, I think, though, is to try and not like, don't like get down on yourself because someone else is doing something good.
Right. Yeah. Well, that just goes back to like comparing our gifts. I mean, the disciples did that, right? Like,
exactly.
And I think I do that a lot. Like, looking at people with amazing, just obvious gifts. Like even like some of the, and this is hard. And I mean, this is just for Christian leaders, but like we go to conferences and we see like these guys who are just like so gifted at preaching. And I look at that and I'm like, wait, why don't I have that gift?
Right.
You know, I'm not being asked to speak at conferences, and you either get frustrated at that person or you get kind of down on yourself.
Right.
Is that unique for us? Is that just, I mean, do you think people that are working in software design do that? Or?
My hunch is that that's probably everybody. Like
in some level.
Yeah, got that to some level. Yeah. But yeah, it is a definite thing where you're constantly, because I think everybody has this comparison syndrome, and that's even why people. It's a big thing of like why social media is like a struggle of comparison, and so you see people that seem more successful in whatever job or in their family life or in their marriage, and a lot of it's just like how people put themselves forward.
Either it's a facade, or maybe they really are. But to be happy for them and celebrate that. And
exactly.
This is like a whole nother podcast, but that's like a spiritual discipline, I think.
To celebrate other people's wins.
Mourn with those that are mourn, and
that's
have
good.
joy with those that have joy. Yeah.
Right.
Whether it's your giftings or success or what.
Yeah. And I think it's hard I think this is like actually, and it's funny like where we're taking this episode, but like
we'll edit most of this.
No, but I think that mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice is actually like a huge lesson for our whole world right now, because it's so easy. We see people that have a genuine area of grieving or struggle or feeling oppressed or whatever, and it's like there's so much of this like I don't, like this sort of like discounting of people's like feelings in that, and then this jealousy thing or comparison thing, and so
we're just a culture that, I'm speaking to myself, but we love tearing down people after they've been successful. Like there's nothing better than seeing someone fall.
Right. That's why I love your fantasy football team.
It all comes back to that. So,
because you have won a championship and I haven't, and so then when I see you losing now, it brings me joy.
Yeah. So Eric and I, if anyone's still listening, are part of a 12-team league. It's all guys that kind of originated here from Calvary.
Yes.
And it's very fierce rivalry between all of us. Yeah.
All right. I got more questions.
Okay.
All right. How does your the way you're wired, there's this sense of being this caring nature. How has it ever kind of like come to bite you with friends, family, work? Kind of the way you're wired. In what ways has that come to bite you?
100 times over.
Yeah, like what does someone with your temperament have to be aware of?
Yep. So anyone that resonates with encouragement, mercy, empathy, every problem seems like something that you should get involved in. So every situation with another person, if they have a need, you feel like you could help.
Yep.
And first of all, that's not healthy because you can't help everyone. It presents you, it even puts you in a position in people's lives that isn't like you put yourself even sometimes over God, because like, rely on me, I'll encourage you, I'll give you empathy, rather than pointing people to Jesus. And I have blown it over and over again in both those realms. Overcommitting to trying to help too many people, or just stepping in a place that God never even intended me to step in.
Right.
And then what happens with that is then, of course, you can't keep that up. So then a person who's relying on you for encouragement, empathy, when you're not there for them, gets really frustrated at you.
Right.
So I've burned, hurt a lot of even people maybe on this podcast who are listening who, counted on me for something and I couldn't deliver because I was trying to do that for too many people.
Right.
And then, and then it got in the way of God wanting to deal with it or encourage them.
So
did you follow that?
Yeah. Essentially, for someone with your wiring, saying no is very difficult.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Right. And so then you said yes to so many people.
Right.
But that's like balls in the air juggling, and you can't possibly keep it going or spinning plates. And it's like...
You're going to let somebody down.
Yeah, you're going to let Yeah, that's really hard. And I remember like you even talked about how like you're so present with the person you're present with that you like forgot that there's a next person that you're supposed to be with or something like that, right?
Absolutely.
But because like it's so interesting because of the way that you are, it's like that person you're with is like what matters so much. Right. And because it's like, that's what's hard. Some of these things are like these goods, but like you have to be careful of. In the midst of it. And you're probably more of like, there's two types of people too with this, I think. I'm like in a large group or like, let's say like a party or like the church lobby, like there's the person that will try and go around and talk to like as many people as possible. And then there's the person that will just talk to one person the entire time. And you're like very clearly the talk to one and I'm very much will talk to like everyone.
Right.
And so I've had like a surface level conversation with 25 people. And you've had a deep conversation with one. And we probably both have disappointed all of them, but at some level, and not to just be mean to ourselves, but like it is something to like have to like weigh and measure like in awareness. So anyway, I'm sorry, I don't know. That's
I really agree with that. And I hope that helps anybody that maybe does have more of the counseling, gifting type things. That, like just those are the things. And probably most are aware of that. But saying yes to too many things or even just getting in the way of, or trying to be a functional savior to somebody too. Right.
So that's good. Have you seen, because I think you have grown, I know it's like still like a thing for you, but like I know you have grown over that. Right. Like how, like has there been anything that sort of helped you in that growth?
Yeah, I think, part of it is just knowing my limitations, right? So I'm a husband. I have 4 small children. So those are good limitations. Right. Like my first priority, one day, Book of Ephesians chapter 5 says that I'm accountable to present my wife as holy and blameless before the Lord, not necessarily even a church member, but my wife. So there's like, I need to have that my first priority, my kids. And so that's a limit. The fact that I feel like too, as we get older, and I put you in this situation category too. As we get older, I just have less energy and like I get tired at 9 o'clock at night. Where when I was a young adult pastor here, I could stay up till like 11 midnight. I go to Denny's with young adults and just talk about their lives. And now it's like 9 p.m. I'm heading home. I'm tired.
Exactly.
So that's a limit. I think just recognizing some of my limits is one.
Keeping your priorities.
And within that priorities too. I think too, just kind of failing and realizing like, oof. Right. It doesn't feel good when you overcommit.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Like it's just, I think it's like, because I think people honestly probably most of the time would see you and think like, that's all good and easy almost like right. But it is like just even to be this person that is this nurturing and caring for people in this way and have this big heart for people, like it does have ways that you have to like be careful, you know, and you have to work at it still. It's not just the supernaturally natural thing.
For sure.
And so it's cool. I love that. And like, so then, maybe kind of coming all around to my little prank at the beginning here, but how has all of this and the way that God has shaped you and formed you and the things that you've learned over the years about this, like how has that like helped you in your ability to live out God's command to love your neighbor?
Well, I think just I'm naturally curious about my neighbors. That sounds kind of like a weird sentence.
You peek over the fence or whatever.
Wilson from Home Improvement. But I'm naturally curious about who lives around us. I like to get to know people around us. And so I think that's helped build like quick rapport, relationships with people. So I think that's been good and helpful. Marie, actually, my wife, Marie, she has such a heart for, we've lived, I think I said this last Sunday in our sermon, but we've lived in the same house for almost 20 years. And she just loves our neighborhood. She's organized nights where the Christians in our neighborhood have come over and prayed for their neighbors, which has been super cool. They've actually had nights where they've just had like a bunch of ladies over just that are, part of our streets and just trying to get to know them, build relationships. So even watching her has helped me in this way of just like, oh yeah, it's not just because we live 5 minutes here from the church. It's not just driving past all my neighbors to get to ministry here.
Right.
It's actually seeing ministry as in our neighborhood. But it's hard too. I get home at night or on the weekends. It's like our downtime, right? So sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, I hear my neighbor outside. I should walk out and just say what's up. Like I get lazy, tired.
Right.
So it ebbs and flows, I think, as far as like if you ask my neighbors, like, oh, what's Matt about? Like, oh, they say good guy. I don't see him a lot. So I think even in this season to grow and like just being outside, available. I think that's something I'd love to keep doing.
Yeah. My hunch, and I don't know if this is true, but my hunch is you are definitely like available to your neighbors to serve them, and you probably know them maybe even better than a lot of people know their neighbors. I don't know if that's true, if you feel like that's true, but like you probably said encouraging words to them that people in their lives don't normally say.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I would think. So I know it's like humility or like not bragging. This is like a hard thing to kind of just talk about how this is how nice I am.
Right. Yeah.
And so I get that, but like knowing how you're shaped and wired, like I bet like I said, I bet you are saying things to people that encourage them in ways that like they're not hearing in the rest of their life.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's like a really cool thing, like from you or just others that I know are kind of wired like you. That can do for people. And so I like want to almost like encourage you and others to like be bold with that. Like keep like using that thing that way that God has made you.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you ever feel like you're like weird or something, like when you're too like nice to people?
Well,
you know what I mean? Because it's kind of counterculture, you know?
Yeah. I have had people say like, I thought you were just a fake person.
Right.
I was really watching to see when the facade would fall down. So when I hear that, I go, oh, yeah, I guess.
That's intimidating a little bit, you know, because then you know, like, this is how you are.
Right.
And you're just living out your authentic self. But then now people see that and now they're kind of like, well, let's watch till this, like, House of Cards falls over.
Sure.
You know? But what I can, like, tell people after working alongside you for 20 years is, look, Matt Doan is who you think he is. And he's also a real person that still gets frustrated and annoyed tired or grouchy or whatever.
Yeah.
But like through that, you still like this like continually are displaying that like that love of Christ. Like that like hope for people's best, I think is really what like, you know.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, that's
see
good. I did have, I've been coaching Little League for a lot of years, and I had a guy come up to me one year and he's like, dude, you're either on drugs or you're a Christian.
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, yeah, I'm actually a follower of Jesus. And he's like, oh, okay, I knew it. And
that's a funny description.
But then on a side note, we ended up getting into it on the baseball field, me and this other coach.
Oh, no.
It was the day before, no, it was before Easter one year.
Easter.
One of his kids like slid into one of my kids hard, and I like mentioned to him like, hey, tell your kids not to do that. And he like barked back at me. Oh. And so then after the game, I walked up to him. Anyway, it's a long story we don't have to get into. But like we started escalating, and I wasn't backing down. Like I was like protecting my kids.
Kicking dirt and stuff?
It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Tommy Lasorda style.
Yeah.
But so then I felt so convicted after that conversation that for some of the things I hadn't backed down on that. So I saw him the next week, and I go, hey, his name is Steve. I go, Steve, you know I'm a Christian. And you know what? I just got super competitive. I shouldn't have called you out in front of all the other parents and teams. And he goes, oh, man, it's okay. And then through that conversation, he actually came to Easter Sunday here at Calvary that next day, which was super cool.
That's amazing.
And like just seeing his family sitting out there, I was like, this all came because of us having a little competitive moment on the field, but then being able to like diffuse that by just having a conversation afterwards. So,
and that's the part that takes boldness. It doesn't take boldness to like yell at somebody. It takes boldness to like
follow up with that.
Follow up, admit you're wrong, admit like you know.
Sure.
Oh, that's good.
So okay, not sure why I brought that up, but
no, I think that's helpful. So okay, maybe sort of last question.
Yep.
Like, how do you think people that aren't shaped like you can be more like you? what kind of stuff can people think through?
I think from a theological perspective, to begin with, it would be just seeing that every person's made in the image of God.
Yeah.
So they're image bearers, right? So Genesis talks about that.
Yeah.
Every male and female created in the image of God. So to see the homeless person and to see the millionaire, both equal in the sight of God, valuable, not because of who they are, what they've done, but because of what God's done in making them. So I think if you see each person like that, all of a sudden you're at Starbucks and the barista is maybe a little bit like slow in your order and you're getting annoyed.
Yeah.
Okay, that person's an image bearer of God.
Yeah.
Or you're at Target and there's a homeless guy asking you for money right outside. The person's made in the image of God. Or you're, someplace where you're next to a CEO that's making a lot of money, and that's an image bearer of God. So I think theologically, that's where it would help.
Yes.
And then secondly, just asking the Spirit of God to give you the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Kindness, gentleness. I mean, a lot of the fruit of the Spirit is niceness. If you kind of could boil it down to it, not niceness that you're not. I mean, you're standing up for truth and justice and righteousness.
But you're patient with people.
Ultimately, there's things about your life that the world would say, "Oh, that's nice."
Right. That's interesting to think about, actually, because and probably we need to place that as a value, right, or as a win, or as a strength,
right,
to be gentle, to be seeking peace, to be loving, and kindness is one of them too,
for sure.
And it's the kindness of God that like leads us to repentance to Him, and so like to display that. Same kindness. But I think it is that when you said like seeking the Spirit, being prayerful for that, like you have not because you ask not at some level. Like have you asked God to shape your heart that way? And so like I know I need to like make that my continued prayers, like Lord, keep softening my heart, like. And like sort of full disclosure, like something like Diddy or Dave Mitchell used to like say to me.
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah. So like I would when I was the executive pastor of ministry and Dave was still a senior pastor, he was my direct boss, and so I'd have these like one-on-one meetings with him, and he would constantly tell me like, Eric, firm heart, soft edges, firm heart, soft edges.
So good.
So like I'd have these convictions, but I think I would display them a little too aggressively or something, And so he'd be like, firm heart, soft edges. So like have that firm conviction.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be weak or soft or whatever.
Yeah.
But like then on the edges, you bring it with gentleness. You bring it with respect. You bring it with kindness and love of Christ. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's something we all can take away even from this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So listen to as who we affectionately call the Diddy.
Yes, Dave Mitchell just dropping wisdom bombs.
Yes, exactly. All right. So I'll let you plug one thing then as we close. So I'm not exactly sure as this is airing, but pray and go neighboring.
Yep.
So like if people want to be a better neighbor and they've been thinking like, okay, this is how I can be kinder, this is how I can be more strategic in my life to bring both of these balances together, and I want to do that to be a good neighbor, where can they sort of learn more?
So praying in the neighborhood I think will soften their hearts towards people just supernaturally in amazing ways. So to find out how you can get involved in our movement with that, you can go to our Reach page, which is calvarylife.org/reach, and then it'll kind of you can navigate from there to find some materials. And there's kind of a couple different opportunities. One is you can just jump in and kind of do it on your own and just and even report back how it went. We'd love to hear stories. But then also we're going to have a task force that the goal is to pray over as many neighborhoods as we can in Orange County within a 5-mile radius here at Calvary. Yeah. Which it was funny. Someone emailed me this week. They're like, do you realize how many houses and people there are in 5 miles radius of Calvary?
Far.
Which, number one, like what a strategic, awesome place we live, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's probably, there could be a couple 100,000 people within 5 miles here.
Yeah.
And so, just to remind us, church, again, we're in such a cool, God just has us right in the right place, the heart of Orange County. Yeah. But then we have this task force that's going to go and just street by street pray over as many homes and buildings and businesses as we can. So we'd love to recruit as many to jump in as possible on that. Yeah. So again, go to calvarylife.org/reach. And then you'll find out more info on that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I agree that if you want to take a step towards being kind of more like Matt Doan, which we all want to be.
Yeah.
But is I think like it is asking God for it. It is seeing people as these image bearers, and then try this whole thing of pray and go and praying through your neighborhoods or neighborhoods around Calvary, and just pray for people for whatever, like for God's heart for them and for God to shape your heart. And even when we've talked about evangelism, as a church, like this whole sort of like chow prayer, which is like it's a funny little cheesy acronym, but we pray for courage because it's hard and it's scary sometimes. But we pray for a heart. That's the H. It's like that God would stir in us and like develop in us a care and compassion for others to see them in this way, that our evangelism comes out of that, not out of like some sort of like, we're going to win or we're going to score, like, that's like that whole win souls kind of thing is like this, got this like thing about it, but it's because we love people. We want them to know Jesus who loves them and then opportunities and words to say.
Yeah.
So.
And that's good. And prayer will accomplish really all four of those things.
Right. Exactly. So your goal, everyone, as you have been listening, is to be more like Matt Doan. So pray.
More like Jesus.
Process. Well, because Matt Doan is seeking to be more like Jesus every day, as we all are. Yeah. And so I like messing with you in this way, in a kind way. Hopefully you feel encouraged.
Yes, thank you.
You got it. So thank you. And thank you for listening to the Calvary Life Podcast.